नमस्कार, सुस्वागतम, अभिनंदन, केम छो, वणकम, आदाबाज, सत श्री अकाल, राम राम, खंबागाड़ी, खुशामदीद एंड अ वेरी गुड आफ्टरनून। मैं अनिल भारद्वाज आप सभी का पीआरएल के अमृत व्याख्यान में स्वागत करता हूं, अभिनंदन करता हूं। I, Anil Bharadwaj, very warmly welcome all of you for the 88th PRL का अमृत व्याख्यान। This is also the 13th PRL का अमृत व्याख्यान version 2.0, which we started on 30th of January of the year 2023, when we completed the 75 episode series of Vyakhyaan, conducting every Vyakhyaan 1 week, starting on 4th of August 2021. PRL Kamrit Vyakhyaan is a series which we started to celebrate the 75 years of PRL's legacy in space sciences and fundamental physics. So PRL Kamrit Vyakhyaan actually also coincides with Azadi Kamrit Mahotsav, which is celebration of the 75 years of independence of India. Today, that is 24th of January 2024, we have yet another very distinguished Vyakhyaan Karta with us, Professor Thamban Meloth, who is the director of National Center for Polar and Oceanic Research, which is a center of Ministry of Earth Sciences, Government of India, situated in Goa. And he will deliver the Vyakhyaan on the topic Exploring Poles in a Warming World, Indian Endeavours and New Frontiers. So we greatly appreciate and thank Professor Thamban Meloth for agreeing to deliver the Vyakhyaan today and to be with us celebrating this PRL Kamrit Vyakhyaan. I would now request my colleague Professor Pallam Raju to kindly introduce the today's Vyakhyaan Karta to our WebEx panel over here and all those who have joined us live on the PRL's YouTube channel. Over to you, Professor Pallam Raju.
Thank you, Professor Bharadwaj. It is indeed a great pleasure for me to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Thamban Meloth. Dr. Thamban Meloth has been associated with the National Center for Polar and Oceanic Research since 2002. He had completed his master's degree from Cochin University of Science and Technology in '93 and PhD from Goa University, wherein he actually worked at the National Institute of Oceanography. And after completing his, since then, actually, he served as assistant professor at the Kannur University and as a scientist at the National Institute of Oceanography before joining NCPOR in 2002. His research primarily focuses on the climate and variability and its impact on glaciers in polar regions. He has undertaken several expeditions to Antarctica, Arctic, to the Himalayas and the Southern Ocean. He was also part of the India's first scientific expedition to the South Pole in 2010. In recognition of his scientific contributions, Dr. Thamban has been awarded many recognitions, like the prestigious National Geosciences Award by the Government of India, as well as several national and international awards. He is a Fellow of the Indian Academy of Sciences, Fellow of the National Academy of Sciences, India, and a Fellow of the Norwegian Scientific Academy for Polar Research. He is also a member of various national and international committees and panels, like the WMO's Executive Council on the Polar and High Mountain Observations, Research and Services, a scientific steering group of Cryosphere and Climate Project of the World Climate Research Program, and international, and a scientific steering committee of the International Partnership in Ice Core Sciences. He also represents India in the International Arctic Science Committee Council, Scientific Committee on Antarctic Research, SCAR, and the Council of Managers of National Antarctic program. Dr. Thamban has supervised several PhDs in the interdisciplinary field of the polar and marine sciences and has contributed to over 125 peer-reviewed publications. With these few words, I would invite Dr. Thamban to deliver his talk on exploring poles in a warming world, Indian endeavors and new frontiers. Dr. Thamban, please.
Thank you so much, Dr. Palanraju, and thank you, Professor Anil Bharadwaj, and all the team at PRL. I would like to share my slides now, and we'll go straight into the. I hope you can see now.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much once again. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to, in fact, interact with the PRL scientists, as well as actually to the ability to talk about the subject, which is actually relatively away from our area, but have a lot of implications for our future. So the National Center for Polar and Ocean Research, which is under the Ministry of Earth Sciences, we call it actually the Indian gateway to the polar regions, because this is one institution which is the nodal agency for entire activities in Antarctic, Arctic, and in the old ocean surrounding that areas. Therefore, any research activities are normally undertaken through in fact, undertaken only through the institute. Yeah, if you look at the frozen world, actually, where the world water is found in frozen form, there are mainly two places which will come to our mind. One is the Antarctica in the southern hemisphere, and the Arctic in the northern hemisphere. Antarctica is a continent, a size of about nearly more than 4 times of Indian subcontinent, covered with nearly 99% of the ice as thick as sometimes 4 kilometers, and surrounded by an ocean, which we call as the Southern Ocean, which is part of the various oceans like Indian Ocean, Atlantic, as well as Pacific. And therefore, it has got a very unique geography as well as unique characteristics because of that. Now, compared to that, the Arctic, which is actually the northern hemisphere, is mostly an ocean, which is partly frozen in large part, like the sea ice formation. But also it's an ocean surrounded by the land. Land again actually has a major land body in the entire on the Earth's surface. So therefore, actually, each of these both these regions have their own similarities as well as differences. And then there is a third region which a lot of people call as a third pole, but Himalaya, which actually contains not only the Himalayan mountains, the mountain system, which has large areas covered in ice, actually as glaciers, and then also there is a much larger area as permafrost, permanently frozen land. And this area has large implications for the world's population, because nearly 10 major rivers originate from these glaciers, and all these regions are highly remote. That makes them extremely difficult to approach. And therefore, the studies of the polar regions are extremely complicated, as well as there is less data existing compared to the rest of the world. Why are they so important? Because if you look at the Earth's climate system itself, it's largely regulated by these two poles. And these areas also happen to be one of the most vulnerable parts of the planet Earth in the warming world, which I'll come back to it later on. And if you look at the current situation, actually nearly 70% of Earth's fresh water is locked in the ice in this region. And one of the most important factors for the increase in sea level is this melting polar ice. And no doubt, actually, they are also home to amazing biodiversity, and they have a very unique and fragile ecosystem. And if you look at Antarctica, has a strong relation in the past with India, like the geological past, because when India and Africa or Australia were together as a part of the Gondwana land. And they also will have an implication for future, because the changes happens in Antarctica will impact the Indian the climate system, largely, in fact, the global climate system. And Arctic has been always connected with Indians, the climate system, especially the monsoons, and therefore they will impact our future. And both these regions, in fact, all these 3 regions are economically very vital, because the Arctic has a large amount of hydrocarbons yet to be explored. And as the sea ice is melting, we will also have a large fishery resources coming up. And of course, they're going to be very strategically and geopolitically crucial because especially the regions like Arctic, as the sea ice is melting, they're going to be rushed for resource extraction and opening of new sea route, what they call a northern sea route, compared to what we typically what we follow the southern sea route along from Atlantic to Suez, through Suez Canal to Indian Ocean and Malacca Strait and reaching Pacific. That may change in future. We'll come back again to that point. If you look at what is happening, how much the climate change is impacting the polar regions, most of us are quite aware about it because almost every day you hear a story in the media, in the newspapers and in the social media on the impact which people see. Some of them could be hyped, some of them are real, some of them are maybe a small scale feature actually being discussed in a larger way. Sometimes the larger issues are sometimes don't receive the proper attention of media because media prefers actually those things which are not the one which everybody like to study. So if you look at the effects of warming in poles, of course, as the globe is warming, you're going to be increased acidification, the warmer temperatures, and also the melting ice will lead to low salinity, which will lead to the decreased phytoplankton population. Therefore, decrease in phytoplankton can be also lead to the nearly 80% of decrease in the krill population, which is the basic protein actually for the most of the penguins and other birds and mammals in that particular part of the world, especially around Antarctica. And sea ice melt also can impact walrus in the northern hemisphere and the Arctic, and it could also impact the penguin population. And as these hunting grounds in especially in some of the regions like in Arctic will be disrupted because of the ice melts, there's going to be a large decrease in population of these larger mammals. And more importantly, it's also directly impacting a lot of people living in that part of the world because the permafrost melting is threatening a lot of homes, businesses, and also a lot of the natural, what you call the native habitats are actually they're going to be disrupted. If you look at the recent increase in the sea ice lows in Antarctica itself, if you look at the GRACE gravity-based observations actually of the mass changes, what you see actually typically the biggest change what you see around is in the Western Antarctica. In the past used to be only the Antarctic Peninsula, which is the tail of that Antarctica. But if you see the larger loss of ice mass happening around the West Antarctica, and all this the flow which you're seeing is ice. This is the higher area, higher elevation land, and it is flowing into the sea. And you can see like river like kind of flow happening to along these ice shelves. And these ice shelves are the one which are currently controlling how much ice mass is going to remain on the Antarctic ice sheet. Any loss of these ice shelves, therefore, could be endangering the larger ice sheets. Ice shelves are nothing but floating bodies compared to the ice sheet which is sitting on the land. And sea ice which is surrounding Antarctica are actually basically seasonal in nature compared to that of Arctic, which is a multi-year ice. If you look at the last nearly 20 years, Antarctica shed nearly about 150 gigatons of ice per year, which have a small but a significant impact on the sea level, and it's going to increase as we go here in the next decade or so. And it's not only that, as the climate is changing across the globe, we find that more and more heat waves are reaching Antarctica. For example, one of the classic one is actually which happened in 2022, March 18. Within less than 24 hours, the temperature increased nearly about 40 degrees Celsius. That is exactly about 38.5 degrees Celsius above normal, in a place where the temperature should have been at -60 at that time of the season, because it's already close to the winter time. In the high elevations of the East Antarctica, where the temperature could be around -60 degrees, in one day the temperature increased nearly by 40 degrees Celsius. Such kind of large changes, like for example, what you see in the down panel, can have a serious implications on the ice sheets stabilities. Can also have implications on the life along the coast. And such kind of record-setting temperatures used to be very less in the past, and they became more and more common in these years. And such intense heat and moisture intrusion to continent is mainly in the form of atmospheric rivers. I'll come back to that again. So basically, the atmospheric rivers are nothing but a very long, as long as it can be, nearly about 2,000 kilometer long, narrow belt, which could be, which is less than 500 kilometer, of strong moisture transport from lower latitudes to higher latitudes, especially along the lower atmosphere. As you can see in this picture on the right side, actually, one of my student actually is working on an extreme climate which is happening in Antarctica. You can see such a large, intrusion of air mass, which is very warm and moisture rich coming to Antarctica. So some of these events, these kind of rivers, in fact, extreme events can bring a moisture over nearly 20 to 30% in just a couple of days of the entire annual average. The entire annual, contribution of snow which is coming, or the moisture which is reaching to Antarctica. Antarctica is a dry place, as most of you are aware, and the moisture has to come from the ocean. And these kind of extreme events are becoming the real, the trains which bring such moistures. And within a couple of days, few days, 1 or 2 days, you can have nearly 20 to 30% of such extreme events reaching Antarctica. So atmospheric rivers in southern hemisphere are basically shifting towards Antarctica, because Antarctica used to have a very strong polar vortex compared to the Arctic. Because of the ozone depletion, as well as the greenhouse gas emissions, as well as the changes in sea surface temperature, this polar vortex is becoming more and wobbling around. Actually, they're becoming more meandered. This meandering of polar vortex is allowing actually sometimes this kind of warm inflows reaching Antarctica in a specific time. So because of the shift, you expect more and more atmospheric rivers reaching into landfall over Antarctica, which is certainly going to impact its ice sheet and the surrounding sea ice. It's not only that actually the sea ice is going to be impacted. Some of the studies already showing actually there is a large impact on the penguin population. This is one of the model study, in fact, actually, we just clearly indicate actually that it could be some of the emperor penguins actually, like in one of the most what you call the remarkable species found in Antarctica. They could be extinct completely by year 2100. Basically, because if you are the highest temperature, like say plus 4 degrees Celsius or so, they could be even extinct actually in the last part of Antarctica, even if the business as usual what we are happening now. So this is something, a serious thing which you're going to expect whatever, even if you make a change. But however, making a change will at least reduce the impact. When you come to the Arctic, it's a very dramatic thing which you see. One thing which actually you must have, some of you must have known, there's something called Arctic amplification, which is, there is of which actually wherein actually Arctic temperatures on an average typically much larger compared to that the global average. However, in certain part of Arctic has even risen by nearly 7 degrees Celsius locally. So such a local amplification around the Arctic is leading to large impact on the sea ice in that areas. As you can see, even last year, actually 2023 itself in September, when it was just end of the what you call the winter time, you were still having one of the very lowest values recorded in the past. The lowest one was, of course, in 2012, which has a very specific reason to it. But if you look at the all average values, and you still have every year after year, you find the lower values. So Arctic sea ice is extent is in fact declining as a rate of nearly 13% per decade. And this is something picture you must have many of you seen actually, that the Arctic sea ice reduced nearly by 50% within ever since the satellite data started providing you that sea ice extent. And it's shrinking in all seasons, and most dramatically, of course, in summer. And it's not only impacting the sea ice, Arctic is becoming warmer. If you look at the temperature of the non-frozen land of Arctic, from 1979 to 2016, you can see the large areas of Arctic is getting is not freezing anymore compared to that in the past, and it's becoming more greener. is if you look at the the right-hand panel, you can see the large areas of the Arctic is becoming more you can possible to have more agriculture of late. So this is something which impact of warming happening as due to the Arctic amplification. If you look at the it's not only sea ice or the land which is warming. If you look at the Greenland, which is the largest island over there in the Arctic region, is also losing mass much more dramatically than Antarctica. You can see that actually nearly about the latest from 2000 as on 2023, it's about nearly 270 gigatons per year is being lost. One more study which shows from a much longer time record, because the GRACE data starts only from 2002, so you got only about 20 years data. But if you have to look at the very long-term data, you can from 1985 onwards, they see that actually Greenland lost almost nearly 5,000 square kilometers of area. It corresponds to about nearly 1,000 gigatons of ice lost to the ocean. And this is becoming more and faster and bigger in the coming decades. How do we are affected by this? That's a big question. Sitting in a place like Goa or sitting in a place like India, we are more worried about rains, we are worried about the heat, and we are more worried about pollutions. Why do we worry about the warming happening in the polar regions? Of course, some of us know that reduced sea ice have a lot of meaning in terms of, because it's all this entire ice mass act like a white body reflecting back most of the sun's solar energy back to the space, and whereas with the reduced ice means less reflected heat, meaning more intense heat waves worldwide. But it also means extreme winters. As a polar jet stream is start getting affected, you can have by this warm air, it can meander southernwards, which you can very clearly see in Arctic region especially. It also started happening even now in Antarctica. So you have sometimes during winter time you are bringing extreme winter cold. Then you can have also this is something which is known. Increase the loss of ice will lead to increased sea level. But the rising seas also endanger a lot of coastal cities and small island nations. And especially even if a few centimeter increase in sea level can impact the coastal region because of the storm surge, which multiplies the impact. It will certainly impact the food security because the polar vortexes, which is increased with the increased heat waves, you will have unpredictability of weather will be existing, which will have a serious impact on the crops on which most of our food systems are depending. There could be certainly increased shipping, especially in the Arctic region as ice melts. New shipping routes potentially open up in Arctic. However, what we should remember also, they could be very tempting as thinking that actually, okay, you reach faster to the Pacific compared to that of actually going all the way to the very difficult places like Suez Canal and the Malacca Strait. But they are incredibly dangerous because actually it's unknown, unmapped territories. So there could be environmental disasters in waiting. There is going to be certainly loss of wildlife because melting permafrost could trouble for the lot of Arctic wildlife like polar bears, walrus, and foxes. And more importantly, the wildlife and people are coming to more frequent contact, which lead to conflicts. This is something which we see almost everywhere. And thawing permafrost, because of this, losing that what you call strength of the permafrost can lead to large amount of emission of methane, which is of course a greenhouse gas and have a direct implication on climate change. But also it also lead to more warming. And this permafrost also can lead to more instability to the land, which brings in a lot of more dangers than as we see in Himalaya. However, what I want to stress here actually that what happens in the polar regions does not stay in ports. It has a direct impact, it has an indirect impact, and it has a combination of effects happening all over the world. There exists a connection between poles and tropics, although they look like so remote. So the climate changes in tropical and polar regions are interconnected. Many studies clearly demonstrate that a substantial portion of the Arctic warming may be driven remotely from tropics. And also its vice versa also could be true. That means the tropics also could be influencing the polar regions. I'm talking about in near time scale, actually. I'm not talking about only in the long-term time scales. And Arctic sea ice especially could lead to increased tropical sea surface temperature, increased precipitation on tropics, and shift in the polar, the position of the intertropical convergence zone, which act as the monsoon trough during the monsoon period. Therefore, it's going to be a spell trouble for quite a lot of our regions too. How are the poles and the tropics connected? There are, of course, many theories and many standard features to it. On the atmosphere, we call actually say it's a bridge, atmospheric bridge, which is one theory which has been put up in the recent past by B.N. Goswami et al. And then there is ocean, there is an oceanic tunnel, which takes much longer period compared to what happens in atmosphere is much faster. Any event which is there within atmosphere can pass on much quickly compared to that what happens in ocean, which can say take decades to centuries. For example, actually, one of the very clear earliest studies on this particular linkage between the mechanism of what connects to the poles to the tropics came from the B.N. Goswami et al. In 2006. When they clearly showed actually there is the multi-decadal oscillation of all India rainfall and Atlantic meridional oscillation are very directly linked. And they come out with a mechanism wherein they found that actually a positive AMO could be induces a positive, persistent positive tropical, thermospheric, tropical thermal gradient. In fact, that can, bring an anomaly over Eurasia. With such an increase in, the meridional gradient in the tropospheric thermal gradient can actually, increase the Indian summer monsoons. This is something actually has been going on kind of, quite some time now. There have been many more studies on top of it. Recently, around our team actually at NCPR also found that there's a clear indication that a decline in Arctic sea ice could be impacting the rainfall in the Indian region. So one of the study by your Saurav Chatterjee et al. Actually, which came in Nature, Climate and Atmospheric Science, they show that actually a decline in Arctic sea ice changes the jet stream, which leads to anomalous meridional circulation, which is controlled by anomalous meridional circulation, which will impact the Rossby wave activity, atmospheric Rossby wave activity, which will then come towards, fluxes towards subtropical Asia. With such a strong and subtropical high, we will have an enhanced upper level divergence, which can finally lead to enhanced moisture convergence at the lower level and leading to extreme rainfall. Therefore, this episodes of rapid decline in Arctic is concurrent with a rapid increase in the extreme precipitation events over the West Central India. So, then very recently, one of our colleagues from NCPR again shows that actually there is a clear relationship apparently existing between the intensification or Arabian Sea cyclone genesis potential and its relation to the warm Arctic. They show that actually that over the last several years, increased post-monsoon cyclone genesis potential do find during 98 to 2021, and such an intensification of cyclones over Arabian Sea is concurrent with the positive phase of warm Arctic cold Eurasia feature, as you can see in this left panel. You have a warm Arctic and a cold Eurasia system. And such a, the upper atmospheric circulation associated with that particular, the system, when it, can induce meridional gradient in subtropical jet. This idea essentially helps in the intensification of anticyclonic circulation over the India, and also reduces particularly, the vertical wind shear favoring intensified cyclones over Arabian Sea. So these are more and more studies clearly show that actually there is a clear relationship existing, between what happens in Arctic or Antarctic does not stay in Antarctic or Arctic. We look back in time. This is about we are talking about a time scale about nearly now 1,000 years. Very recent paper, a publication by our Vikash Kumar and his team at NCPR shows that there is they use essentially proxies in a very high resolution. Then they also use the machine learning models to ensure find out actually what is what happens to work. So the proxy records from the Svalbard region to ensure find out actually what is what happens to work. So the proxy records from the Svalbard region to ensure, find out actually what is, what happens to the world. Hello, proxy records from the Svalbard region to ensure, find out actually what is, what happens to the world. Hello, there is some noise I can hear from the.
Some issue. I don't know. No, it's fine. I think.
Okay. So what the study shows that actually this the proxy records from Svalbard reveal that warm Arctic is directly linked to the enhanced summer monsoon precipitation. And when they use the different machine learning models, also you'll see that the Arctic surface air temperature is the most important contributor that increased the monsoon precipitation. They suggest that a modulation of meridional thermal gradients of the Indian monsoon essentially facilitated the observed, the teleconnection between during the last millennium. When you go back in time further, we first started with the modern times. We went to about 1,000 years. Now we are talking about millions of years. When you further go back in 3 million years, they find that, especially during the mid-Pliocene warm period, which is considered to be the most recent period with a similar CO2 content, like about 420 ppm as of today. Therefore, it's considered to be a modern analog. A study from Arctic, from our colleagues from NCPR, show that very low Arctic sea ice lead to a stronger Indian monsoon even during that particular time period. So all this clearly indicates there seems to be a mechanism linking from the modern times to the past. So if you look at the future of these linkages, we know that actually on the left hand side you can see that continuously that the temperature anomaly is happening, and with the time you can also see that the Arctic is getting more warmer and more warmer. At the moment, we can say that tropical oceans control most of the internal variance in Indian monsoon's intensity in a very called the interannual variability. But at decadal to multi-decadal scale, polar teleconnections are important, or even centennial time scale is important. That's what a lot of the polar, the proxy studies clearly shows that. But this could change, because currently we think actually, okay, the what you call interannual to decadal variability is not directly influencing the polar, but this could change in near future as the polar amplification intensifies and the relative dominance of the polar system over Indian monsoon can take over, even at shorter time scales. So therefore, a warm Arctic coupled with a diminished sea ice may intensify Indian monsoon in the near term. This is something which we need to be worried about. Come to the third pole which I was talking about, which is we also consider them actually the water tower of Asia, which because it provides the entire water for the Indian as well as the other Asian countries. There's no doubt about it. They have a serious importance to the region because it's critical for sustainability and economy and energy needs of Asia. And they play a vital role in global weather and climate system. As we know, the Asian monsoon system is largely controlled by the Himalayan region. And any temperature change or any changes in that areas can implicate changes in the monsoons. And more importantly, thawing of Himalaya has a strong impact on the downstream environment in terms of water availability, human health, and sustainable development of South Asia and its people. Even more importantly, year after year, what we are here, it also affects the stability of the slopes, increased incidence of floods due to the glacial lake outburst flood, or rain on snow, landslides, and snow avalanches. In fact, every year after year, you find the many of such extreme things. And of course, the Himalayan ecology is deteriorating. If you look at the warming climate and thinning of the glacier, there is a direct increase since 1980s onwards. Everything used to be confused till then, but now it's a very clear from 90s onwards what you see actually that there is a consistent loss of ice. And these melting glaciers, as I said, actually also as the glaciers start retreating, you have the formation of lakes. The lakes start expanding as the time goes, and as more and more glaciers start retreating, the lakes become larger and larger. However, you should remember that these lakes are formed on a moraine material, which is damped by natural material. Therefore, they cannot withstand whenever there is anything happen to that particular region. For example, a calving of a large glacier or a cloud burst. Any of this time, these lakes are unable to withstand. You have an overtopping, and then as you see in the case of Sikkim, for example, specifically in case of South Lonak Lake, actually, this flow is something which was expected for a long time. Almost several studies clearly suggested actually these lake could will not be able to sustain for a long time. In a way, it is a disaster that was waiting in for a decade. The problem with all these areas are actually extremely remote, and early warning systems are still at its infancy. Therefore, we are still at searching for answers. How do we tackle? Because there are hundreds and thousands of such lakes being formed in Himalaya. So adaptability going to be more important, and you may not have a solution for every such lakes for a warning system. However, there are larger, very vulnerable one could be considered for early warning systems. Another important thing which you see also as glaciers are retreating, you have an increasing landslides happening in Himalaya, because there are, this is basically about actually, the area become more and more fragile because actually, the permafrost is being lost. Now, I want to also, tell this, August audience also actually what do India does in Antarctica and Arctic. India has been to Antarctica for more than nearly 43 years now. And first, we landed there in 1981, and we set up a station by 1983. Then we set up another station in 1989. By the time the first station was already lost to the ice. The second station, Maitri, is still existing, but we will be, hopefully we will be coming with a new station in the near future. There's a lot of activities going for, for replacing this old station. We have a new, very brand new station called, okay, of course, it's not no longer brand new, it's about 10 years old, called Bharati. It's still a modern station, very well maintained station. So these two stations are really separated by about 2,000 kilometers by air and about 3,000 kilometers by the ship or the vessel. It's pretty very far away between these two. So Antarctica, as I said, a huge continent with almost this many number of stations. Still, it's very least studied region because of that. So these are the two stations in Antarctica. The Maitri, which has both are wintering stations. That means there are people throughout the year after year, on 365 days. Maitri has a capacity for wintering about 25 people, but summertime it can balloon up to 80. Because most of the people who goes to the Bharati station is also first lands here in Maitri. And Bharati is actually got much better facilities, but it still it does not require larger areas because actually this Maitri remains as a hub for us. How do we go to Antarctica? Of course, we operate from Goa. We have in the past we have been going by using an oceanic vessel all the way from Goa to Antarctica with a stopover at Mauritius, which used to take about a 1 month time. So you lose in the process, you lose nearly about 2 months of your actual time which you could spend in for actual research for this travel. So therefore, you have an opportunity now to we go all the way till the southern tip of Africa, Cape Town. From there, you can also fly to Antarctica these days. So those of you actually involved, you feel actually that spending so much of time in Antarctica is not possible, or it impacts your research. Now, believe me, there is possible. Actually, you can go and come back in a 1 month time period. It will not be always possible, but it depends on many factors. But it is possible. And you still require a vessel which goes to Antarctica for carrying your, all your provisions and your fuel. This is what typically look like actually when you reach closer to Antarctica. Sea ice, and then the ice getting thicker and thicker as you get closer to Antarctica. It can take several days to cut across this ice and reach Antarctica. So sometimes, like for example, this year actually we have been spending quite a lot. In fact, year to year this varies how far how much thick ice is going to be around there, and that will decide actually how fast you can complete this mission. You can also fly, as I said, actually to Antarctica. So these kind of the cargo planes actually, in this case it's a Illusion 76 flight, which can land on ice, and there are also smaller flights as you can see on the right hand side, which can take you from this place to other smaller stations and smaller areas. So it is possible these days in Antarctica to travel by air as well as conduct research by air, and sometimes, which makes them very important for active researchers. And also, believe me, there's also very good communication systems in Antarctica compared to the past, where there is to be given only 3 minutes in a month or 6 minutes in a month. Now people can even sometimes connect with the WhatsApp and so on and so things. So it's possible that connectivity exists in stations at least. They may not be everywhere in Antarctica, but when you are in a station, the premises, it is possible. However, living and working in Antarctica are not very simple and straightforward. There are many things which you need to be trained and you need to be learned before you reach Antarctica. Life may not be as simple as you think. Sometimes they could be just very big blizzards, which will affect your the place where you are attending outside. Because most of the activities to work on the ice, they have to camp like this. And there are bad weather days which are more common in Antarctica than the rest of the world. So they can impact your activity. Therefore, you need to be prepared for that. What are the main scientific thrust areas what we can carry out in Antarctica? The entire activities in Antarctica of late is around the climate change. What is happening? What is its impact? How it could be in future impact the various systems. Therefore, you have all branches of the science, from atmospheric science to space science, biological sciences, the cryosphere, which is the study of glaciers and snow and so on, the geosciences, the environmental aspects, and even human physiology being studied in Antarctica. This is one thing which I thought I should highlight to you actually, that India has come out with its own Antarctic Act in 2022 and also passed a new Antarctic Environment Protection Rules. So therefore, anything and everything you do in Antarctica these days are governed by the regulations. Because this is important because India is part of the Antarctic Treaty System. Therefore, it's also equally important for India to have its own national measures for protecting Antarctic environment and its associated ecosystems. And this is also in the accession to the Madrid Protocol, which India signed, and the Convention of Conservation of Antarctic Marine Living Resources. So we are truly actually the responsible the country doing research in Antarctica. So therefore, we have requires every activity in Antarctica now requires permits compared to the past, where you could simply go and come. But don't worry, these are all actually for people like us actually who do proper normal research other than not going to harm the system, not to be worried. In Arctic, we started our activities in 2007 in around Svalbard, which is actually basically administered by Norway. We also carried out some work in the Canadian High Arctic and some in Greenland. And we hope to expand these activities. We also had scientific activities in the Arctic Ocean, wherein they were able to even reach to as close as the North Pole. So we have a small station in Svalbard called Himadri, which is a kind of a leased one, because unlike Antarctica, Arctic belongs to various countries. So for example, Svalbard is administered by Norway, Greenland having its autonomous government as well as control, connected to the Denmark. And of course, Canadian Arctic is controlled by Canada and so on. So recently, in 2023, still now we have been carrying out most of our activities only during the summertime or the fair weather season. From 2023 onwards, we also started our wintering expeditions to Arctic, essentially to ensure that there is a continuity of data which come from Arctic. We have various observation systems. This is a station which India has actually called the Himadri. And various observation data which come from Himadri are actually limited to only a certain period. And people are also unable to collect samples during one particular season, that's winter time. So it is important to have this continuity of data. And more importantly, there are certain research like space sciences and all. People want to study auroras, for example, as you can see, beautiful aurora over here, can be only done during the winter time. So these are the reasons actually why we started the wintering expeditions. Therefore, there are opportunities for an institution like a physical research laboratory to get into more seriously into the research which happens in Arctic and Antarctic. I welcome all of you. The thrust areas, I said, actually, mostly we were working in the marine science, on the biogeochemical process studies and the oceanic process and sea ice around Arctic. Then in the atmospheric science, mostly on aerosols, trace gases and precipitations. Within environment science, a lot of contamination coming to Antarctica, which is also affecting the food webs. And there are also long-range pollutants related to Arctic region. And of course, we study the glacier dynamics and these links. And there are a lot of geologists still working on the past climate studies and its relation to the Indian monsoons. India also came up with an Arctic policy. These policy documents are extremely important because they provide the framework under which you can carry out the research as well as you can expand your activities. That shows how how serious the government is about our polar regions. The Arctic policy is basically came in 2022, basically towards the increasing the scientific research in Arctic, also towards increasing our contribution to climate and environmental protection. It's also important for actually using Arctic as the Arctic sea ice is melting. It could be used for human development, economic development of a country of more than 1 billion people. And there's going to be a potential transportation and connectivity in the Arctic region. Therefore, we should be in the forefront to tap these opportunities. And how do the governance, in the warming conditions, how do we control the governance? Till now, Arctic has been very limited to certain countries. The ocean has not been open. Now we have an opportunity of Arctic Ocean opening up. How will you govern it? How will you carry out the activities? So international cooperation is going to be the key. So India is very serious about such international cooperation. So you will have an opportunity if you want to carry out actually in Arctic and other regions. The collaboration is the key. And we also look forward to national capacity building. Therefore, we look to organizations like PRL to join more and more activities in this series. So our vision is to transform our scientific activities with a multi-regions across the Arctic and a multidisciplinary approach with a pan-Arctic perspective, with a year-round presence in the region, with the novel projects and expanding to other realms of Arctic. Arctic Ocean is one of the key areas we want to explore more. Unfortunately, we don't have polar research vessels, so that's getting delayed. So we depend on other countries at the moment to get access to these regions. We also established now a network of observatories, and we want to expand this network of observatories, both in land, sea, and in atmosphere and cryosphere interactions. And one most important area is actually we want to sustain the scientific observation of Arctic Ocean and modeling, basically to understand the sea ice loss and its impact on the monsoons. And of course, India is very much engaging very much the Arctic Council, which is the governing body of the Arctic region, and the various Arctic forums to support our strategic interests. So the National Center for Polar and Ocean Research has therefore become the Indian gateway to the polar regions for any of the institutions who want to come to the polar regions. We have our footprints from South Pole to North Pole, across Antarctica, having 2 major stations to facilitate your research, a station in Arctic to facilitate your more research, and we also have activities carrying on in the Southern Ocean, the ocean surrounding Antarctica, which is the key area in the warming world where how much carbon dioxide it can, because the largest sink of carbon dioxide, we all know it actually the ocean, of which nearly 40% of that sink is the Southern Ocean. So a warming world, how much Southern Ocean can actually take more CO2? That's going to be a question. So there are a lot of scientific questions which one could address. On top of this, in our activities in the polar regions, we also are part of the large mission project of the government of India called Deep Ocean Mission, where we are exploring in the mid-oceanic ridge of India for the new minerals resources for the country. Of course, we have various research facilities. So you're welcome to visit NCPR to just understand actually what are the potential areas we can collaborate and cooperate. So I just my take-home message for this this audience is actually that the global warming is impacting polar regions much more than the rest of the world. So the opportunities to study are much bigger in the polar regions and the rest of the world. If, for example, Arctic is warming nearly 4 times faster than the rest of the world. it could be completely loose, is submerized by 2040. And Antarctica having increased changes happening of late. And more importantly, the polar regions are deeply connected to our climate systems, requiring us to understand it better for better predictability of our monsoon systems and other tropical climate systems. And if you look at the Himalaya, defrosting of Himalaya going to be in a warming climate, going to be serious implications for sustainability of the region and safety of its environment. So we have already a policy framework on place. Therefore, people have a very clear understanding what we can carry out there now. And therefore, NCPR is looking for increased engagement with academic and scientific institutions for innovative and collaborative projects in any part of this region. So NCPR is therefore where all the poles meet. So welcome to NCPR and collaborate and join in this endeavor. Thank you so much. I can stop sharing it, Sanjeev?
Yes, please. Now you can stop. Thank you. So, thank you, Dr. Thamban Meloth. It was really a nice and invigorating talk with combination of science and general knowledge about this polar region. And I think it must have helped our students and all of us. In fact, it has helped to understand the intricacies of the polar region. Now it's time for question answer session. So I would like to take question answer sessions from the audience. As you know, we have two set of audiences, one on BevX, another on YouTube channel. So first we will take from the BevX here. So I would request the audience, whoever wants to ask questions from Dr. Thamban Meloth, to raise their hands by pressing that raise hand bar on the BevX panel. Please go ahead. Okay, so I think our director has a question for you, Dr. Thamban Meloth. Please go ahead.
Hello. Thank you, Sanjeev. And thanks, Dr. Meloth, for a very illuminating talk for me, at least also, in terms of making understand the nuances of the polar science and the difficulties which you face when you go over there, the kind of research which is being carried out both in the Arctic and Antarctic. But you also mentioned about the third pole, and I saw in your last one or two slides about Himansh. So can you just brief us something about that?
Yeah. Thank you, Professor Bharadwaj. Actually, I thought because I didn't want to take more time, because the Himansh, we are also having started our research in Himalaya since 2012. Mostly started actually as an activity to carry out the monitor the glaciers and to also understand how much the contribution of these glaciers to the downstream rivers, especially focusing on one basin that is within the Lahore-Spiti region in the Himachal Pradesh, the basin called Chandra Basin, and where we are monitoring nearly 6 glaciers and set up a series of instruments across the basin, like automatic weather stations and water level recorders, and of course various other systems over the glaciers and so on. To support all these, we also have a station in that somewhere close to the this what do you call Chandrata. There is a lake actually, it's a very famous lake actually, Chandrata. So we are close to that. Actually, you can see a station. Actually, we call it actually Himansh. This station essentially facilitate our the logistic activities for the people to stay there. People also to put up instruments there. We have automatic weather stations. We also have the aerosol measurements over there. We also have some of the other what you call the campaign mode experiments happens over there. So, but that's basically a kind of a station which facilitates our activities. But the actual work is taken undertaken in the various glaciers by trekking into those places. And Himalaya is one of the most difficult places, as you know, than even than Antarctica sometimes, because people have to do by travel by trekking. So Himansh station supports. In fact, we had a collaboration with the SPL in the past, where the researchers from SPL, in fact, Suresh Babu's team came actually and set up some instruments. There have been some publications out of it. So it's an opportunity for various people who want to study aerosols and other things, and even set up other instruments.
So just a follow-up question, Sanjeev. So is Himansh open for putting any kind of experiments of short or long durations?
It is possible actually, but as of now, actually, we are there only during the summer time. Summer means it is starting somewhere from the month of May till somewhere end of September or sometimes middle of October. Then we close the station because the weather in that area can be quite bad. Sometimes you will not be even able to reach in the month of May because of this year you must have seen Himachal had a series bad weather systems actually. So we don't operate it 24 hours actually, but our automatic weather stations, automatic systems still run on a 7 days. So it is possible, provided actually, how big and how complicated your equipment is, it's possible.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you, Professor Bhardwaj. Dr. Thamban, just a related question, as you yourself kind of emphasized about the role of permafrost, particularly in the greenhouse gas emissions. So in the Himans or in, say, nearby region, for example, let us say in Ladakh or in Sikkim, does like NCPR has any kind of a vision towards studying the greenhouse gas emission from permafrost? Because it has become a very big issue nowadays,
Right. See, you see, as far as Himalaya is concerned, so many institutions working actually. Everyone is welcome. There is no specific thing required. But our activity in Himalaya is restricted to only one basin. We're trying to expand to the eastern Antarctica, in Arunachal Pradesh and Sikkim a little bit, but our manpower and resources are limited at the moment. So we are looking for collaborators to come to us. Yes.
Sure. Okay, thank you very much. So now I think my colleague Amjad Hussain Laskar has a question for you. Please go ahead, Amjad. Amjad, can you hear me?
Yes, to unmute. Unmute, please.
Unmute, please. You're muted.
I'm doing here.
Yeah, now we can hear you. Go ahead.
No, that was Atul, I think.
Atul, okay. So, okay, I think I'll take Amjad later. Professor Pallam Raju has a question for you, Dr. Thamban. Please go ahead, Professor Pallam Raju.
Thank you, Dr. Sanjeev, and thank you, Professor Meloth, for this wonderful talk, giving us a lot of information, and also, telling what India through NCPR is doing at all the three poles. It's really been a very illuminating talk, and then there is a lot of both financial and strategic aspects as well that you kind of alluded to, especially in terms of Malacca Strait and issues like that, and especially with the growing interactions globally. I think NCPR will be playing a major role. I'm able to see that. My question is in terms of the Indian Arctic policy. Recently you just informed us that that the Arctic the wintertime measurements have started. So what are the scope or plans for the future in expanding Arctic research?
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Pallam Raju. So essentially, we started, I think, the winter time. We used to have actually a series of measurements and as well as data collection and sampling in the summertime, even to the other seasons. The winter time actually we found is a huge opportunity for space science people actually, which probably is not possible during the summertime. And also, a lot of our the people actually are missing data during that time period. That's something which we wanted to address. So, but as we move forward, actually, I think we want to expand our activity. There are limitations within Arctic compared to that of Antarctica, actually, because we are in someone's territory. There may be a limit, and there are a lot of other activities happening. So we can't duplicate some research which is already ongoing. At the same time, there may be niche areas or the very, very novel ideas which we can implement. And NCPR is ready to support that. Actually, if somebody comes up with something very exciting thing which need to be supported, if it is within our the operational limits, we always expand it. But as I see it now, actually, I think the winter time I feel mostly for atmospheric science people and space science people, with a limited some amount of research for the environmental science people. But otherwise, actually, most of the rest of the time actually could be various other environmental and biological and other science going on. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And also, I hope that there was there are a lot of excitement to look at the analogs of chemistry and astrobiological aspects, as I was mentioning.
Right. This is something actually could be very exciting. So we are just looking for our early studies actually, because we have certain projects actually which we are looking at how they are going to come up actually. That would open up a new avenues actually to enhance our.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sanjay.
Thank you, Professor Pallam Raju. Now, Dujesh has a question for you. Dujesh, please go ahead. Yeah, Dujesh, please go ahead.
You are muted, Dujesh.
I think
Atul, please unmute everyone for time.
Unmute. Yeah, unmute everyone. Oh, okay. Yes.
Okay, please.
Yeah. Dujesh,
Go ahead.
can you hear me?
No, he's still unmuted. He's still muted. You have to unmute
He's
him.
still muted.
I have unmuted him, but
Okay, there is some issue, it seems.
You can try with
Okay,
Amjad.
Amjad, in the meanwhile, Amjad has a raised hand. Amjad, go ahead if you can. Yeah, go
Am I
ahead.
audible now?
Yes,
Yes.
go ahead.
Okay, good. Thank you, Dr. Thamban, for nice talk and sharing many opportunities for us to do research in Arctic and Antarctic. I have a few questions actually. One is related to scientific aspects and others are related to infrastructure. You mentioned that this Arctic warming is actually causing intensification of Indian monsoon, if I am correct.
Yes.
So is it just a general intensification of monsoon or increase in the extreme events?
Yeah, what I was trying to say, Amjad, is basically that it's the extreme events in some part of the country. It is not, again, you cannot generalize it. You're talking about, you find a relationship, especially in the Western India, very extreme rainfall increase. Actually. This is, again, I would say, it's a one of its kind study. We can't say just because actually we find one particular study says that, we will have to carry out more and more studies. That is what I'm saying. We just started. In fact, this is quite an exciting field, which a lot of people have more opportunity to study. So that's something which I would say actually, this at the moment, these are actually probably regional specific, and we do not know the time frame, how long they have been, together, working together with the relationship, or maybe as it is getting warmer and warmer, will it be much more stronger? The relationship could be stronger, or it could loosen out. We are looking forward to it.
Okay, thank you. The next one is actually more related to infrastructure and probably already asked by Professor Bardwaj and Dr. Sanjeev some related questions. So my question is actually this, any program or any plan to drill ice cores in Himalaya? I know that it is challenging and quite sometimes it failed, but in near future, do you have any plan?
Yeah, thanks. Actually, in fact, that's I experienced something in our dream for quite a long time. It's quite challenging, not just because challenge actually alone. Actually, I think again, if you have people, actually right people joining us, actually we would be happy because we are a community. At NCP are very small. Our focus at the moment is in Antarctica, so we don't want to divert that actually so much. Actually, we are unable to do a sufficient science over there and here. However, Himalaya also has its own challenges. Challenges not just because in terms of reaching to Himalaya, which is of course challenging, and how people are able to overcome that. But much more than actually, the Himalayan glaciers are actually, you need to identify a place where it's absolutely ice is not moving. Most of the glaciers in the Himalaya actually are quite either fast moving or having a lot of debris over there, or it could also be we cannot be accumulating some other places. So we need to identify the right place, which requires a very extensive surveys. There are places in Himalaya much higher altitude. Unfortunately, they are all above 6,000 meter altitude. Maybe some are even close to 7,000 meter altitude. Even close to the Everest, the Chinese have found actually ice is melting. The large amount part is being melting. So it all impacts your isotope data. That's a big problem actually. So it is for us to find out the right place. There are people ready to invest time and energy to it. Actually, then we have a required facilities and some level of expertise which could join hands.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, yeah, we are also planning to do something similar, particularly in the Himalayan permafrost region.
Okay.
So also in Arctic, so yeah, definitely this is
Absolutely welcome. Yes.
yeah. So we'll be in touch with NCPR. Thank you for the nice
Thank
talk again.
Thank you, Amjad. Just a related question came to my mind, Dr. Thamban. That let us, what kind of a time frame do you expect in Himalaya? Let us say, even if you go get a core from there,
It depends.
is it like will it go very far in time, basically? Because
Can there may we see it's basically it's all depending on accumulation, isn't it? There are places where there is very accumulation exists. You may find only 100 years or 200 years record, but you may also find 1,000 years record. It's possible because you may not find actually like what you find in the Chinese, the Tibetan plateau, where they got thousands of years actually in much longer time period. Because ice is much more protected over there. You are we are on the southern side of the Himalaya, where things are not so great, in terms of the slope and other stuff. Actually.
Okay, thank you very much. Professor Adi Deshpande has raised hand. Please go ahead, Deshpande.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Thamban, for nice talk. I have a couple of questions, specific scientific questions. The first is about the Arctic monsoon connections. So my question is that the effect of this Arctic amplification and its effect on the Indian summer monsoon rainfall, is it through sea route? The pathways is sea route or atmospheric teleconnection?
It's all atmosphere. It's all atmosphere. Anything sea route, as you must have seen, paleoclimate people will tell you, they talk about thousands, that it takes almost 1,000 years for the signal to reach to Indian Ocean. We are talking about actually almost, year to year, at least within a decadal, that's what they call atmospheric bridge.
Okay. So what are the specific atmospheric parameters which are correlated in the Arctic region and that in the tropical region?
So if I'm not an expert, what I can see actually, what they do actually, they look at the various the pressure systems blocking in that those areas actually, and then looking actually how do they when given a system actually how do they implicate the Eurasian region, because Eurasia, the moment you connect to the Eurasian region Arctic actually, then there is an immediate connection to Indian monsoon. So they try to look at these the systems. And one important factor which they try to connect is actually Rossby wave system, the atmospheric the large scale the wave system. It's basically something happens in one place, you get amplified actually in a very long distance. This is something, the Rossby wave system is something which there have been most of the studies which I read, I've rightly understood actually, they try to connect it.
Okay. My next question is that one of your slides you had mentioned about the Antarctic ice mass curve, and there was something very conspicuous. In 2016, actually Antarctic mass has increased. There seems to be a kind of hump. So what exactly is the reason behind that? What has happened?
See, there is, what we should be very careful about at this point. Actually, there are internal variability, there are decadal variability, there are many factors goes into each one of this. What you have seen, if you look at the sea ice around Antarctica till 2016, there have been a constant increase. There have been always, talking about, to diverse this happening in Arctic and Antarctic, because Arctic have been continuously losing mass, whereas Antarctica has been gaining actually. But if you look at 2016 onwards, Antarctica seems to be again following the global pattern. So, what you have to remember actually, when you say Antarctica is not a single point. You're talking about a large landmass. Even within India, you can see the climate system so different from the east coast to west coast and south. You talk about Antarctica, where there is an Amundsen Bay, which has actually completely different, the oceanic circulation systems and the atmospheric systems actually, which has its own implication actually, how it will affect the things around there. So there are various atmospheric factors. There are also decadal factors comes in. El Nino southern oscillation has its own impact. There is an impact of actually the southern analog mode, which is basically the pressure difference between the mid latitudes and the high latitudes. That brings to more increased warmth actually in some part of the Antarctica. And whereas it may be bringing, like East Antarctica is relatively considered to be unaffected as of now by the warming which is happening compared to West Antarctica. Because East Antarctica has a much higher altitude compared to West Antarctica. Also, West Antarctica, the ice are mostly floating into the ocean, what we call as ice shelf. Therefore, when any ice which is floating into the ocean means it's not only warming from the surface, but also it's holding from the bottom, because seawater is also getting warmer. So there are multiple factors which impact all this actually. So there may not be Sometimes, for example, 2016, what happened? 2016, sudden loss of sea ice has been implicated for the large bomb cyclones. The large amount of cyclones which all happened in one time. It so happened that they all coincided at the same time, and it led to the loss of a large amount of sea ice cover. Once the sea ice cover is lost, then what happens actually that the protection which the sea ice shelves which have existing, they will be losing. So that we call it actually something when you tell to the average people, the kind of science people, actually you tell them it's like a bottle of champagne. Typically, we are worried about what is there inside the bottle, is in the champagne part of it. Whereas there is a Coke which basically protects that champagne inside. The moment you open the Coke, the champagne just pops up. Everything goes out. So we call actually most of these, the things which is surrounding Antarctica, these ice shelves and sea ice, everything, they act as a Coke. The moment they are losing, then the speed at which they're moving, till then they were all, able to sustain because they were stopped. Suddenly they start to move in one go. So these are the things which, we are also worried in future. Any such, sudden change can, lead to a large ice mass loss. This is a big problem in Antarctica, big unknown in Antarctica, because as of now, we do not know how such a sudden change can lead to a loss of mass.
Right. My next specific question is that on 18th March 2022, you highlighted a peak in the temperature of 38.5. So somebody is monitoring what exactly would have happened on that particular day to raise the temperature by 40 degrees? Some localized phenomena or?
Right. No, it's basically a phenomena came from the subtropics. Actually, it is not from Antarctica. So I was trying to say actually there are things like atmospheric rivers or the systems which come from the subtropics or tropics. There are these narrow bands of system actually, come in, everything is favorable. Like there is a blocking ice happens around Antarctica. They are allowing actually this kind of thing, events to, intrude into the Antarctica. So on that particular fine day, everything work together. This kind of even, river kind of system. In fact, in that particular case, it was slightly different, but such kind of system can intrude. And when they intrude, you should remember these moistures are coming from the tropics or subtropics. They're very warm. They're highly 90% moisture. When it reaches to Antarctica, which is about very less than 10% in most of the cases, actually, the moisture content, and this temperature which is already -60 or -40, whatever it is. So it can bring a very immediate, momentary change. Within one day, it increases, and then it comes down. The system again will get lost because the moment it's like a cyclone landfall. Once it's landfall, it's over actually. Then thereafter, you don't see that impact. But within that 1 day or 2 days, you can bring this kind of changes.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much for your answers. Thanks.
Thank you, Professor Deshpande. Just on a lighter side, Dr. Thamban, I'm not sure how many people here can relate to your champagne example.
Yeah, you are in a habit.
We don't get to see quite often.
Right.
So anyway, I don't see any question on the WebEx or on the YouTube which can be asked here. So just to my colleagues here, I would definitely ask that whenever you visit Goa, please visit NCPR and see Dr. Thamban's ice core laboratory. It's an amazing lab where they have preserved these ice cores from polar region. So now I hand over to my colleague, Dr. Durga Prasad, for word of thanks. Please go ahead, Dr. Durga.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sanjeev. On behalf of the director, PRL Amrut Vyakhyaan Committee, and the entire PRL family, I thank Dr. Thamban Meloth for accepting our invitation and kindly delivering the 88th Vyakhyaan of PRL Amrut Vyakhyaan series, which is continuing its 2.0 version. Thank you very much, sir, for accepting our invitation and providing a very informative Vyakhyaan on an extremely important topic of the current state of Earth's poles and the changes that are induced due to the impact of changes in the global climate and environment. So you have also mentioned about the third pole. So thank you very much for this very exciting talk and very informative. And also many thanks for patiently answering all the questions from our viewers. Now I thank our director, Professor Anil Bhardwaj, for his constant encouragement and continued support, so that the series of Vyakhyans keep on going so well, even in its second innings. I thank our Dean, Professor Pallam Raju, Chair of Amrut Vyakhyaan Committee, Professor Nandita, and Co-Chair Dr. Lokesh, and all other members of Amrut Vyakhyaan Committee and others behind for their constant efforts. Most importantly, lot of thanks go to all our participants and viewers who have joined us today through live through WebEx as well as YouTube for this Vyakhyaan. With this, we come to the end of this very episode of PRL Amrut Vyakhyaan. It's now time to sign off from PRL. Please do join us for our next episode of another interesting Vyakhyaan. Till then, stay tuned and keep following PRL updates on its website and social media platforms. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much. Once again, thank you so much for inviting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Dr.
Thank
Thamban.
you.
Thank you, Doctor.